Do you know or believe the truth? So back in 2016, when the Cleveland Indians, now the Cleveland Guardians, were making their postseason run, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that they could go all the way and be champs that year. I think Father Stenger would agree. But then came Game 7 and the infamous rain delay that ended it all. I knew, beyond a shadow of doubt, and believed that that's what cost us the World Series that year. You can debate me on that. I will gladly debate you. On the contrary, the good old Cleveland Browns, where you never know what the season's going to look like, and you can at least have a hope that they'll win at least one game. Knowing and believing, they're intimately connected. Knowing a truth and believing a truth, while they are different, are linked to how we carry out our day-to-day life. Knowledge, belief, and action. And similarly, there are truths about our faith that we know up here, but are still becoming a process, becoming a core belief right here, to affect our actions and our habits. And it's right here where St. Paul and Jesus meet us today. St. Paul briefly mentions in his letter about being doers of the word and not merely just hearers of it. And Jesus gets on the Pharisees' case again while quoting the prophet Isaiah, saying, "They worship me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me, and their actions don't match up to what they believe." Because what's happening in the gospel, but the Pharisees, they worship in the temple, they reverence God, they know the law pretty well and believe it, but it's not mirrored in their actions. They can follow the law to a T, but they're blind to the needs and cares of others. I'm quite often reminded of the story when Jesus heals a man on the Sabbath. And instead of rejoicing, the Pharisees get really upset. They get mad at Jesus, like, "Why did you cure someone on the Sabbath? How dare you?" Instead of rejoicing, like, "Oh my gosh, this man's better." No, there's this disconnect between what they believe and how they act. And how similar is that to our lives at times, where we might experience a disconnect between what we know about our faith, what we believe about our faith, and how we live that out. I believe it kind of boils down to one thing, and that's wrestling with one truth. Between knowing this truth and believing this truth, that we are loved by God. For in order for us to be a doer of the word, we first have to be a believer. And to be a believer, we have to know this truth. To use the image of the Cleveland Guardians, I can wear Cleveland Guardians merchandise without knowing a lick of baseball or knowing if they're going to do well at all this year. I can wear Cleveland Guardians merchandise without believing at all that they're going to make a postseason run. I can wear Cleveland Guardians merchandise without going to a single game or watching a single baseball game. Talk about a fair weather fan. In the same way, I can know truths about my faith. I can know it up here, but I don't believe it here. Or I can know truths about my faith, but it doesn't line up with how I live out my life. These truths do not, my actions do not conform to the way I live out my life. Because we learn truths and facts about our reality, and these shape our beliefs. And these beliefs govern our way of life. And all it takes is one little lie to creep in, a negative thought to shape our beliefs from I am loved by God to how could God ever love me? A very small change in that truth that can infinitely affect what we believe about ourselves and shape how we live our life and our habits. And that's where this truth comes into play. For this truth needs to become a core belief. It has to go from the head to the heart. And that core belief serves as the foundation of our Catholic identity, knowing and believing that we are children of God and that we are infinitely loved by God that gives us worth and dignity. Because from that flows how we live and interact with everyone we meet. Because when we know and believe this truth, we recognize that inherent dignity in us. And when we recognize it in ourselves, we can recognize it in each and every person we see and meet. It's what enables us to love and serve the poor, the needy, the migrants, those we see on the streets, going from just knowing I should probably serve the poor to being convicted to saying, how can I actually give of my time, my talent, my treasure to help these people? It's also what enables us to love our family, our friends, those who are close to us, and especially that one person we don't agree with. It's what enables us to hear the Word of God proclaimed, to let that go from what we hear and know to what we believe, to be convicted into action. Because when we allow this truth to transform our thoughts, it can transform our beliefs and totally our way of life. As St. Paul always invites his communities to be transformed by the renewal of their minds, to let their thoughts, the truths they know, transform their beliefs and then transform how they live. Because that is what can transform the very community we live in. And that transformation can start right now. We can take time, examine our life, examine our thought patterns, what we believe. Ask ourselves, do I believe that I am infinitely loved by God? And how is that evidenced by the way I live? So friends, let us begin that process today so that we can be not only hearers of the Word, but also believers of the Word and doers of the Word.